Troy Reader, are you kidding me? This is RamView.
It's hot out there, but let's blow it off the line of scrimmage. Headline, Los Angeles.
Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Trosian, and this is RamView, the August 30th, 2023 edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident? Need help? Got questions? Call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. That's Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. And check out KistlerLawFirm.com. That's one word, KistlerLawFirm.com. Kistler Law, they've been fighting for you since 92. And by Temple City Auto Repair. Having some auto issues? Get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. And of course, by Granite Ridge Christian Camp, a place where your life can change. A lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of fluidity. It's a real fluid day in terms of right after the cuts. Players are getting cut. Players are getting called back to the practice squad. The 53-man roster is out there. Last I saw, that 53-man roster for the Rams looks like it's 54. We're going to talk something about that. We're also going to remember Coy Bacon today. Remember Coy Bacon? He was that marvelous defensive end that was in those tweener years from the end of George Allen to just before Chuck Knox. We'll talk about Coy Bacon today. But for the moment, let's talk about these Rams and their new kicker and everybody else that's coming aboard. For the moment, the Rams roster is listed at 53. Now, with the signing of Brett Maher, the former Cowboys kicker, and we'll talk about that in a second, I think it pushes it to 54. So someone's going on the IR or the PUP or something like that. But if you just look at this as a 53-man roster, as of right now, all 14 of the Rams draft picks from this spring have made the team. So that drops it to 39. 9 other players on this roster didn't play a snap for the team in 2022. Well, actually, 8 of them didn't. Zach Thomas actually played 1 snap against Denver, but that still takes it down to about 30. And then you start getting into the bouncers between the practice squad and injuries, players like Ronnie Rivers, Tremaine Ingram, Jake Hummel, Christian Roseboom, Ernest Brown IV. And now you're down to about 25 key guys. And then you're looking at Kupp, Stafford, and Aaron Donald, who missed the entire back half of the season. It is an interesting roster. I think the challenge is going to be, the bigger challenge is going to be for the Ram fans. McSnead means Les Snead and Sean McVay. They've done this before, so they're not so worked up about it. But Ram fans, that's the challenge, because Ram fans are among the worst in sports. I know people are probably going to curse me for that, but if you've been a Ram fan for any length of time, a legitimate Ram fan, which means you don't just get ticked off every time they lose and say fire the coach. But the challenge is going to be to stick with this team through the first half of the season, because there could be some dark moments. Could be 2-7, could be 3-6, could be 4-5, but there's going to be just some dark moments. True fans will stick with the team. The sports bar revelers will be calling for McSnead's head by week 3, right? So we know that. But it's a young team. I think I saw some breaking news somewhere say the Rams are the second youngest team in the NFL. That's like saying I'm the third half-breed Armenian to run a Rams talk show. So anyway, whatever it is, Rams are the second youngest team around. The team has signed former Cowboy kicker and recovering yips sufferer Brett Maher. Brett Maher was all the talk in the NFL for a couple of years. He's a great kicker. He paid his dues, came in as an undrafted free agent out of Nebraska, bounced around 3 years in Canada, finally latching on with the Cowboys. Last year, he was 29 of 32 in field goal attempts. He was 50 of 53 in point after attempts. But then he fell apart in the Buccaneer game. If you remember that, it was almost painful. As someone who despises the Cowboys and will only root for them when they play the Russians, honestly, seeing him miss 4-point afters, including 3 in a row last January in that game against Tampa, that was a sickening to the soul. You started to feel bad for this guy. And then he bounced back with against the 49ers the next week. He made 2 field goals, but he also missed his only extra point try. So he was 1 for 6 last postseason in extra points. And, when a kicker goes south, a kicker could go south. But the Rams previously had a kicker, Matt Gay, who found his way back to the land of the living and became maybe the richest kicker in NFL history. Not saying the best, but the Colts did give him a heck of a contract. So maybe Brett Maher finds himself in the comfy confines of SoFi, and we have somebody that's going to boot a game winner maybe in Seattle sometime real soon. So we'll see how it works out. Again, he would be the 54th person on this roster, so somebody is going out the door. Pup list, IR. Oshawan Mathis is the guy whose name I've heard bounced around because he is actually on the 53. Okay, practice squad was settled today. Again, fluid. This just changes so quick. But as of right now, and it might not be by the time I'm done with this sentence, but as of right now, Brett Ripien is back, AJ Akiri, Logan Bruss, Mike McAllister, Grant Miller along the offensive line. Marquise Copeland actually is back. Keir Thomas is back. Royce Freeman is back. Tanner Engel and Cam McCutcheon for his defensive backs. Tyler Johnson, Xavier Smith, and Austin Trammell, and Nicolo Kalinick. And Troy Reeder is back. Troy Reeder is back with the Rams. He's done the circuit, right? He went to the Chargers because former Ram DC Brandon Staley was there. Then he went to Minnesota where Kevin O'Connell knows him, and they put him in the street. The only thing he hasn't tried out is Zach Taylor in Cincy, but we'll see after the Rams what they're going to do with him. Actually, the signing of Troy Reeder should bug one person. And to me, it would bug Christian Roseboom. I don't think Reeder's going to bounce ahead of Christian Roseboom, but essentially, aren't they the same guy? I don't know. I'd be really worried because Christian Roseboom could say, no, they could replace me. And Troy Reeder had a ring. The Rams won a Super Bowl with a Reeder as the starting linebacker. So interesting to see. Interesting also to see who was not added to the practice squad. No Jordan Jones, no Jaden Woodby. Those two guys really seemed like they were going to get another look. Woodby especially got a real long look there the last couple of games. And as far as everything is as of this moment, no. Robert Rochelle, bye-bye. Daniel Hardy, no. The one I thought for certain would get a look is Christian Sims to develop him, but no. DeAndre Square, and some people were actually thinking Lance McCutcheon might come around again, but no. The big painful loss, which there wasn't much to worry about the Rams losing in this period of cuts, waivings, and practice squad signings. The worst that could happen actually did. Quindell Johnson, the safety out of Memphis, who actually stood out a little bit this preseason. Not many people stood out, but he did. A lot of people thought he had a chance of making the team and definitely going to the practice squad, but the Bears picked him up. In fact, a few teams were interested in Quindell Johnson, so he moves on to go play with the Chicago Bears. So good for Quindell Johnson. Tough luck there for the Rams. Hey, around the NFL, again, everything's in flux. Players we reported as cut yesterday, re-signed to the practice squad. The Chargers added Max Duggan, quarterback, Keelan Doss, a wide receiver, to their practice squad. The Giants added Cole Beasley to the practice squad. The Carolina Panthers cut Ole Miss quarterback and their former third-round pick just a year or so ago, Matt Corral. They kicked him to the curb, cut him. Saints cut former Raider number 1 first-round draft pick in 2019, safety Jonathan Abram. That guy's been everywhere. Played at Mississippi State, has been a bust in the NFL, but the Saints also re-signed him this morning to the practice squad. The Browns, speaking of former Raiders, added Alex Leatherwood. I guess they're thinking they can salvage this guy. And at the same time, they signed P.J. Walker. Both Leatherwood and Walker were cut by the Bears. The Ravens, in a surprise cut, put Melvin Ingram in the street, as well as quarterback Josh Johnson. But quarterback Josh Johnson knows at the end of every August, he's probably cleaning out his locker and just waiting for a phone call a few weeks later. And he has his go bag packed, right? Cowboys cut Jabril Cox, off-ball linebacker. Cox was interesting because there was a lot of hype on Cox. He moved from North Dakota State to LSU his senior year, had a pretty good year. A lot of hype was he was going to go second round. In fact, I remember talking about him quite a bit before the 2021 draft, and Rams passed on him. They passed on Creed Humphrey and Nick Bolton. Yeah, we know all that. And he didn't land, though, till the fourth round with the Dallas Cowboys, and he didn't make much of an impact there, and he was cut. The Taxkins, though, did sign him. And speaking of the Taxkins, they re-signed former Ram safety Terrell Burgess, who they had cut the day before, along with quarterback Jake Fromm. Speaking of quarterbacks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers put John Wolford in the street yesterday. They brought him back in the front door today as a member of the practice squad. Former Rams out there that are making news, former Ram draft pick, sixth-round pick in 2017, Tanzel Smart, defensive lineman, was cut by the New York Jets. Speaking of the Jets, they cut Zach Kuntz, tight end out of Old Dominion, that a lot of people had their eyes on this draft season. And they also cut former USC running back and Oregon standout Travis Dye, who had signed with them as an undrafted free agent. They put Travis Dye in the street. Vikings, I mentioned, cut Troy Reeder, but they added former Ram defensive lineman Benton Whitley. Whitley was a fringe player for the Rams for a couple of seasons on their practice squad, and Kevin O'Connell liked him enough to bring him for a look-see there in Minnesota. Former Ram linebacker Traven Howard, the guy who got the pick against the 49ers to send the Rams to the Super Bowl, was cut by the Bills. The Bills signed Christian Kirksey, who was released by the Texans. Kirksey still has some game. He had over 100 tackles last year. There's still something left in his engine, and it'll be interesting to see how he works out with the Bills. Colts cut former Ram running back Jake Funk. They also cut Darius Rush out of South Carolina. He was a cornerback. A lot of people were projecting him to the Rams. The Colts took him fifth round, and now they've put him in the street. And the Kansas City Chiefs, signed Rush to the practice squad. Speaking of the Chiefs, they cut former Ram practice squad citizen Duron Lowe. They put him in the street to make room for Darius Rush. Corey Littleton was cut by the Dallas Texans. Max Percher was cut by the Lions, as well as former UCLA receiver Chase Cota. And finally, the Jaguars cut and then re-added Chandler Brewer and Jacob Harris to the practice squad. And I thought that was all worth noticing, that some of these Ram players are finding homes. Quindell Johnson, I'm sorry, allergies. Quindell Johnson signed with the Bears, and they released Terrell Lewis. There was just this piece I had read about Terrell Lewis, and I had passed it on right here, that he was making some strides with the Bears, and they released him. So as we look at the Rams roster, they're keeping two quarterbacks, Stafford and Bennett. Running backs, 4, Akers, Williams, Rivers, and Evans. 6 receivers, Kupp, Jefferson, Atwell, Skoranek, Robinson, and Nakua. 4 tight ends, which is interesting because we didn't see anything out of Hunter Long. Hopkins had the best camp of his career. They're still in love with Higbee, and they spent a decent draft pick on Davis Allen, and they like him. I don't know what Hunter Long's doing here, except the team likes him from the old days. To me, okay, if you're not going to release him, put him on the IR, put him on the PUP list. He hasn't played all summer, and you just signed Brent Maher. But if he's healthy, I guess you could put Oshwan Mathis on the IR. The Rams kept 10 offensive linemen. The surprise one here for now is Zach Thomas, Brian Allen, Coleman Shelton, Steve Avila, Kevin Dodson, Tremaine Ingram, Rob Havenstein, Alaric Jackson, Joe Noteboom, Warren McClendon, and, of course, Zach Thomas. I'll go to war with that. I feel pretty good about that, considering where the Rams were a year ago. No Ty Niski, no Odede Abouche, no Jeremiah Cologne. And there was this other guy that was driving me crazy last year. I forgot who he was. Anyway, we got rid of him. Anyway, much better offensive line if they all stay healthy, and there's some depth here. The defensive line, they kept 7. Aaron Donald, Bobby Brown, Kobe Turner, Jonah Williams, Ernest Brown IV, Laurel Murchison, DeJuan Johnson. I think they're actually hoping now, after 2 previous seasons of no production, they might get something out of Ernest Brown IV. And DeJuan Johnson, Mr. Irrelevant, actually showed enough the back half of the preseason schedule and in camp to make a roster spot. That's good for him. 5 corners are listed on the team: Kobe Durant, Akella Witherspoon, Trey Tomlinson, De'Arian Kendrick, and of course Sean Jolly, which that one seemed the odd fit to me. I thought they would keep Rochelle over him, or even Cam McCutcheon over him. I didn't see much out of Sean Jolly, and I was surprised he made the team. We'll see how long he stays. Linebackers, which again surprised me. I thought Jaden would be someone that at least would make the practice squad. And right now it's Ernest Jones, Christian Roseman, Jake Hummel, with Troy Reeder salivating, waiting to get back on the active roster. 5 safeties: Jordan Fuller, John Johnson, Quinton Lake, Russ Yeast. And the 5th one's Jason Taylor, the late draft pick that had some injury, has an injury issue. I think it was his back a little bit was tight. I'm not sure. I didn't do the study on it. But he made the active roster. He could be a bubble player, considering the Rams did re-sign Cam McCutcheon and Tanner Engel, although those guys are projects, especially Tanner Engel, I think. Edge players, they kept 5: Michael Hoyt, Byron Young, Zach Von Valkenburg, Nick Hampton, and then Oshawan Mathis, who I can't imagine will be ready to play against Seattle on September 10th. But that group feels kind of thin, feels kind of lean. And then again, Daniel Hardy was let go, as was Kiera Thomas. Kiera Thomas re-signed, and the Rams have had enough of Daniel Hardy, which is interesting. Ethan Evans, Alex Ward, and now Brett Maher round out the lineup. So there you go. I'm Joe Terosian, as a sports writer for 21 years, one of the founding members of Mid Valley Sports. Now I do RamView. Thanks to my sponsors at Kistler Law and Temple City Auto Repair. And I do write books. You can find my books on Amazon under Joe Terosian. I've written 2 high school football novels. They've been well received, and you can check them out there. I do all that so I can do my day job, which is I pastor a small church in Burbank called Burbank Faith Nazarene. And you can follow us right here on YouTube at Burbank Faith Virtual, and check us out. Also our website, burbankfaithvirtual.com, and our Facebook group, which is the same, Burbank Faith Virtual. Yeah, I'm reading my note here from loyal RamView follower, AM, and Rams are close to signing Denver kicker. Yeah, it looks like they did sign Mayer. And I don't know if they're going to sign anybody else, because they have to make room right now for Mayer. And I believe they got 1 extra spot open on the practice squad. I think they got 15. They got room for 16. And so that is where the Rams are at. Thank you so much for clicking on. Everyone who's watching live. I never tell you when I'm going on, and the fact that I get live viewers is awesome. One of these days, I'm going to hope to really nail my schedule so I can make sure that this is a drop dead time, like 2 o'clock, noon, 6 a.m. It's tough. It's tough to have people click in, and I'm so appreciative of those that click and watch me live when I do this show. God bless. Okay, little Rams history here. On this date, 1942, Coy Bacon was born. Coy Bacon was 6'4", 270. He sure looked a lot bigger when I was a kid. And he passed away in 2008. He would have turned 81 today. He was an undrafted free agent out of Jackson State, one of those classic HB historically black college and universities guys. And before the major programs decided to start dipping in there and taking that talent, he started Jackson State. Bacon was signed by the Dallas Cowboys and spent the 1967 season on their taxi squad. In 1968, he was traded to the Rams for a 5th-round pick. As age and injuries began to mount on the original fearsome foursome, Bacon's playing time increased. From 1970 through 1972, he was a starter and made his first Pro Bowl. And then in 1973, with the Rams deep at defensive end, Jack Youngblood, Fred Dreyer, Bacon became expendable and was dealt, along with running back Bob Thomas, to the San Diego Chargers for John Hadel. It's really interesting, too, and this isn't in my notes, but it was really interesting about not Deacon Jones, but Coy Bacon, is we understand the fearsome foursome, the Rosie Greer, Lamar Lundy, Merlin Olsen, Deacon Jones group, and then they brought in Roger Brown when Rosie Greer, I think, tore his Achilles, and he aged out and retired. And then Coy Bacon joined that group, and he was very good. But then just before that next wave of Rams success in 73 with Chuck Knox, he was out the door. And so it was interesting about Coy Bacon is that he was kind of that bridge guy, 70 through 72, 69 through 72. He was just that middle of that bridge guy that kind of gets lost to history. He's not really an original fearsome foursome. He's not part of that team in the 70s. But he was a name that I always remembered. Now, John Hadle did a great job for the Rams in '73, and so you understood the trade. So he joined Deacon Jones again in San Diego, and then he was later traded to Cincinnati for Charlie Joyner in 1976. And he said, I use this quote from the UPI. Coy Bacon said, "I was never happy with the Chargers from the day I came, and was happy to go to the Bengals." And that season, he went to the Bengals unofficially. Everyone's gone back and done the looking at the videos and recording these things. Unofficially, they started keeping the sack totals officially in '82, but they do have sack totals from the years prior. And that season in 1976, Coy Bacon had 21 and a half sacks for the Cincinnati Bengals. And somehow, he was only recognized as second team All-Pro with 21 and a half sacks. Man, that's a holdout nowadays, and give me Aaron Donald money, right? So in 1978, Bacon was traded to the Washington Redskins along with Lamar Parrish for a first-round pick. And from 78 to 80, and in his late 30s, Bacon recorded double-digit sacks for 3 years in a row with the Redskins, 11, 13 and a half, and 11 again. So in 14 NFL seasons, Coy Bacon played in 180 games, starting 164, and via film review, he's credited with 130 and a half sacks, making 3 Pro Bowls and second-team All-Pro 3 times. Doesn't that merit maybe a Veterans Committee revisit to say, hey, Coy Bacon maybe deserves a look at the Hall? He finished his career actually with the Washington Federals of the USFL, played 16 games for the Federals in '83, and recorded 7 sacks. It's an amazing career that Coy Bacon had, and it's completely under the radar. And yeah, I think it's time. We need to start doing a push to get not only Don Klosterman into the Hall of Fame, but maybe Coy Bacon needs to get in there as well. After leaving the NFL, he got involved with drugs and got shot. And then an amazing thing happened as Bacon turned his life over to God, became a Christian, and spent his remaining years traveling as a speaker and working with young people. Real unique life, Coy Bacon, and it deserves remembering. And I'm happy I'm able to share that with you guys today as we talk about Coy Bacon. In other Ram history, on this day, 1977, the Rams waived and then brought back and put on the IR Rob Scribner with an ankle injury. Scribner was the undrafted free agent out of UCLA, played some quarterback there, was just an all-around athlete. He spent 5 seasons with the Rams, but he never played another down with them again after the 76 season. He had a brief tryout with Philly in 78, cooking up with Dick Vermeil, who was his Rams coach, and it didn't work out. Also, on this date in 1978, the Rams waived Al Cowlings. Now, everyone knows Al Cowlings because he drove the Bronco for OJ, right? But Al Cowlings played at USC. He played for the Rams in 76 and 78, really nondescript, didn't do much for the Rams, bounced around. But originally, he had been a first-round pick, 5th overall in 1970 by the Buffalo Bills, the year after they drafted OJ. Al Cowlings was 6'5", 255. His first 2 seasons, he had about 16 to 17 sacks combined. And then they ended up dealing into Houston, and his career was never the same. He just kept bouncing around until finally he finished with San Francisco in 1979, appearing in 12 games. But I thought it was interesting to mention Al Cowlings. In 1988, on this day, the Rams released Donald Evans. Evans had been the Rams' first pick in the '87 draft, but he wasn't first round. He was second round, 47th overall out of Winston-Salem. No one understood why the Rams drafted him. The year before, they drafted Mike Schad. And then in '85, they got Jerry Gray, but in '84, they had dealt that pick for Gary Green. And so you could see the John Shaw years were doing their work here to destroy the team. And the Rams whiffed on Donald Evans, played 1 game for them in 2 seasons, and was cut on this day in '88. And he carved out 7 years in the NFL after that, playing mainly with the Steelers and some with Philly. He played 89 NFL games, started 82, collected 17 sacks. Now, when you look at him as a Ram, Donald Evans is a massive bust. When you look at him with the Steelers and the Philly and around the NFL, he worked out a nice little career there. Good for Donald Evans. It's not his fault. The Rams didn't have anyone to evaluate any talent. And doubling down on bad, which is what the Rams did in drafting Aaron Cox, Gaston Green, butchering the Eric Dickerson trade. The Eric Dickerson trade could have been our Herschel Walker trade that set the Cowboys up for a decade, but instead it just killed the Rams because when they traded for Eric Dickerson, they got all those draft picks, right? They drafted Graston Green, they drafted Aaron Cox, and they drafted this guy in '89 named Bill Hawkins. On this day in 1993, the Rams cut Bill Hawkins, who had been a first-round pick, 21st overall, out of Miami in 1989. Hawkins was going to be the next Jack Youngblood, right? He didn't go to Florida, but he was from Florida. He's the new white hope at defensive end, right? That's what the Rams have always been trying to replace, right? They had Jack Youngblood, and they brought in Bill Hawkins. They brought in Grant Windstrom, Adam Carricker, Chris Long. Never could quite replace the original. But Bill Hawkins played 4 seasons with the Rams, played 42 games in 4 seasons, 8 starts, only had 5 sacks. Bye-bye. So the Rams put him in the street on this day in 1993. My friend AM, here's a trivia question. Name the 3 late 60s or 70s Rams that appeared in movie or TV. Well, I will say Deacon Jones was in the Brady Bunch. Merlin Olsen and Roman Gabriel were in John Wayne's movie, The Undefeated. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, man. I know what I'm doing. Thanks for clicking. Thanks for trying. I have some lovely parting gifts for you. Okay, we finished that with Bill Hawkins. Also on this date, the Rams released Damone Johnson. Had a very good career for the Rams, very underrated. We're not going to be on the air tomorrow, but tomorrow, August 31st, is the anniversary of the Rams waiving Elvis Peacock and the acquiring of Mark Giroux from the Colts. Okay, we're winding down here. I want to get to week 9 of the season. Right now, I have the Rams looking at about 3-5 with victories. Questionable victory because I went with my sports writer friend Steve on this one. My heart took me. Questionable victory over the Bengals on Monday night in week 3, victories over the Colts, and victories over the Cardinals, with losses to the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Eagles, the Seahawks, and the 49ers. So the Rams are 3-5 right now. As we're looking at the offenses, we're just going to look at the offenses. We looked at the defenses earlier in the summer. Now we're just looking at the offenses. You know, the Packers are not the same, right? They are not the same. They lost Aaron Rodgers, Alan Lazard, Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, Mason Crosby, and those guys were long in the tooth. Even Randall Cobb was long in the tooth. We understand that. They still got a pretty good defense. Zaire Alexander is there. Rudy Ford had the best year of his career at safety. Rashawn Gary took a dip. Preston Smith took a big drop off. He turns 31. They drafted Luke Van Ness. So their defense is questionable. Their defense is really questionable and going to be vulnerable to that Rams attack. But offensively, this is where I think the Rams have an advantage as well, is against the Packers offense. Jordan Love, the offensive line is aging for Green Bay. The receivers are still young, and we still don't know about Jordan Love, whether he can get the ball downfield. And I'm saying he's going to be a bust. I'm not joining the crowd that says, oh, he was a bad draft pick. But I think after 9 weeks, 8 weeks, that Ram defense is going to be better. And I don't think that Packer offense is going to give them as much trouble as they've done before. And again, it's the trip to Lambeau straight year, but it's happening. It's happening. What's the date on that game? That game is November the 5th, 2023. So it's still somewhat early in the season. It shouldn't be too cold. I think the offensive line for the Rams is going to be better. I'm not afraid of the Packer defense. And here's what I'm going to say. Rams win this game. In fact, I had this game circled as a Rams win even in the spring. I just feel like it's the time we're going to get past the Packers. The window is open for the Rams to win in Lambeau. And if they pull this off, now, originally I had the Rams 3-6 heading into their bye week in week 10. But if they pull this off and can get to 4-5, if the Rams are 4-5 at the end of the first 9 games they play and then go into the bye week, boy, they are a legitimate wild card contender. If you can get to 9 wins and the back half of the schedule opens itself up that way to get to 9 wins, you've got some teams here that are coming in that are going to be vulnerable. You get the Cardinals again. You get the Seahawks at home. You have the Browns. You have the Redskins. Well, the Taxskins. These are all winnable games for the Rams. And so the Rams could win 9 games this year. They could possibly win 10 with a break or two. But I am remaining optimistic as long as Matthew Stafford remains upright. Okay.
It was a stone.
It was a
my
stone
man.
groove. It was an absolute stone groove. Hey, AMs, I need a little pat on the back there, Chief, for my Deacon Jones and the Brady Bunch, Merlin Olsen, and Roman Gabriel appearing in the undefeated. Not that I'm, trying to build myself up, but I did answer the question on the spot without a cheat sheet. Okay, guys, thank you so much for clicking on, for the support you're giving me. Thank you for the comments. Again, if you could hit like, subscribe, let us know you're out there. I would so appreciate it as we build our footprint here. And please, if you get a chance, check us out on Spotify, because we're not doing great on Spotify. If you could do that, that would be great. Oh, Fred Dreyer. Okay. All right. You said 60s or 70s. I was thinking Fred Dreyer in the 80s with Hunter, but I'll give you that one, my friend, because you're clicking on this hot day to watch RamView. Okay, guys, thank you so much. God bless. Take care, and we will see you on Friday.